Well, guys, I am so excited. So I have my prompts from Chantal. So we're all sitting pretty. And we're going to do the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. I'm picking out my books because one of my favorite things every month is to pull the next book off. You know, it's all set, it's all prepared. And it really, for me, it really like increases anticipation for all that's going on, you know, all that's coming and everything. Because I'll see a book and I'm like, oh, I want to read that now. But I was like, no, I wait till May, you know. And so it's like Christmas all year long. I'm waiting for May to come, you know. And Neville, really? And so it's like, it's a thing. So I always have my shelf up. I usually do a little video of me pulling the next one out. And it's just a thing for me. So thanks to Chantal for doing this every year. I discovered it, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe 3. This is going to be the 3rd one I do, I think. I don't remember, but I don't care because I'm going to do it and it's going to be fun and that's what matters. So last year, I'll try to link in the cards or however you do that. It'll be in the description at least, my video for trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Oh my gravy. I had like, you know, because she had to, you know, each one played off of the last one. So I am not kidding you. I had like 4 rows. So, because, you know, it started off with a color. And so I picked my color. Well, I had like 4 books that I wanted to read that were that color. And so I had to kind of play, or it didn't start off with a color. It started off with A or the, but then there was the color. And because of the color, I went back to A or the. And then, you know, it's just like, it was crazy. It was really crazy. And I finally picked a set and off I went. Well, this year, she has a similar kind of thing. I think she's outdone herself this time. This is awesome. It's easier for me because this year I said, the first book I come to that fits the prompt is the one that I will do. And so, or the first one I think of or come to. Like, I mean, there were some that I saw it and I was like, oh, I think I want to do that. But for the most part, it was like, you know, a book with a house or a book with a street. I don't remember what it was. And I had to I was like, okay, first one I find that has one or the other, that's what I'm doing. Except that, you know, you only do that a couple of times because, you know, you're going down and then there's a level-headed one and then you're going down and then there's a level where you can switch. And so it was really cool. I really loved this one a whole lot. And like I said, I picked the first ones. And so I have my list and we're going to do this thing. So, let me see if my tea is cooled off yet. I don't think so. I think it's still way too hot. I mean, at this point, it's hasn't even shifted the color from the milk or whatever. I've got the Harney & Sons Victorian Fog or Victorian London Fog. I think it's Victorian Fog. Victorian London. It's one of the two. But it's kind of a London Fog kind of thing. I thought it fit the whole Sherlock Anne vibes, especially Sherlock. But even Anne, I think, would approve. So, yeah. But it's still very milky. So it hasn't steeped long enough. Okay, here we go. For January, you choose either Montgomery or Doyle. And for Montgomery, it was a book with a cat on the cover. And for Doyle, it was a book with a dog on the cover. Well, the first one I found, I was going through just looking and looking and looking. And the first one I found was Vinyl Resting Place. And it's the Record Shop Mysteries. I think it was Miriam who I first saw this at. She had it. And I love plays on words so much. And it's a big thing in cozies, I know. But I love them, period. And so because of it, I was like, I have to get that book. And then I've had this book for most of the year. All right. So Vinyl Resting Place, it says, opening a family business can be murder. Okay. You got to hear this. You got to hear this synopsis. The synopsis sells it even if nothing else does. So, opening a family business can be murder. When Joni Jessup and her sisters Tansy and Maggie put all their beans in one basket to open Sip and Spin Records, a record / coffee shop in Cedar River, Texas, they knew there could be some scratches on the track, but no one was expecting to find a body deader than disco in the supply closet. That's all I needed to know. I knew Vinyl Resting Place was clearly for me just from that. That is genius, and whoever wrote that synopsis needs a raise. That's my not so humble opinion. All right. So that's my very first one for 2024 for the Read Yourself Bookshelf Challenge. A book with a cat on the cover because there is the cat. So there's that. Okay, so then because I chose, that was Montgomery, book with a cat on the cover. Because of that, we go down to February under Montgomery. I still have to do Montgomery because that's where I started. So Montgomery is Puff Sleeves, and that's read a book over 400 pages. I do not know how many pages are in this book. It's a 6x9 trade paperback. It has 3 of George MacDonald's books in it. Curate's Awakening, Lady's Confession, The Baron's Apprenticeship. It's the Curate of Glaston series, edited by Michael Phillips. I don't know how many pages are in here. There are 3 books in here. I guarantee you there are more than 400 pages. But because there are 3 books in here, the numbers start over for each new book. So this first book has 187 pages. And the second one has 208 pages, 209. So clearly over 400 pages. Anyway, these are George MacDonald, who wrote The Princess and the Curdy, and my favorite fairy tale, The Lost Princess, and then like Sir Gibby, and I think he's the one who wrote Where Did You Come From, Baby Dear? That poem. Pretty sure he wrote that. So George MacDonald is one of my favorites, but he also wrote C.S. Lewis's favorite fairy tale, the Fantasies or Fantasties, depending on if you're American or British. I did not like that, but that's okay. So this has 3 books in one, like I said. The Curate's Awakening, Lady's Confession, The Baron's Apprenticeship. Anyway, I was trying to see if I could find more about it. So here's a little map of Glaston. But the Curate of Glaston is just kind of, they're so rich. His books are so rich and full of faith. And I disagree with his theology in lots and lots of areas, but it doesn't usually show up in his books. It usually just shows true, strong Christian faith, which I appreciate. I am really looking forward to this one. Okay, yeah. March is a book with 2 points of view. I decided to read The House on Foster Hill. Now, I have started this book, but I don't think I finished it, and I haven't read it on Bookreads, so I decided I wanted to do this one. Jamie Jo writes dual timelines, so there's definitely 2 points of view, and I think there's only 2 points of view. I don't think there's more, if I recall correctly. So, I'm really excited about this one. Kane Peterson is no stranger to death. When her husband died 2 years ago, her pleas for further investigation into his suspicious demise fell on deaf ears. In desperate need of a fresh start, Kane purchases an old house with sight unseen within her grandfather's Wisconsin hometown. But one look at the eerie abandoned house immediately leaves her questioning her rash decision. When the house's dark history comes back with a vengeance, Kane is forced to fear the terrifying realization she has nowhere left to hide. And a century earlier, the house on Foster Hill holds nothing but painful memories for Ivy Thorpe. When an unidentified woman is found dead on the property, Ivy is compelled to discover her identity. And then it goes on. I remember the discovery of the body. that much I definitely remember. So anyway, I'm going to read The House on Foster Hill because it's time. I don't know the ending, so I don't think I got through that book. But if I did, whatever. All right, then testing my tea because I'm like dying for. Oh, see, now we've got some color in the cup. Sheesh. Okay. I do love that Victorian London fog. Yes. Oh, and I brought sugar cookies. I like them plain. These don't even have sugar on top. They're made with, there's no actual granulated sugar. They're made with powdered sugar and almond, and that's where the sweetness comes. So they're not very sweet. Okay. Then we go to April, and it's Montgomery still, but Montgomery and Doyle both have read a book where the main character has red hair. I think I have chosen a book with a red-headed character, but I could be wrong. But I had a hard time finding one. I mean, unless I went with like, Find My Pippi Longstocking or something, right? So, but I found Catherine Wentworth by D.E. Stevenson. Just found out D.E. stands for Dorothy Emily. I thought that was really cool. But Catherine Wentworth, there was something, I was looking through it, trying to find her hair color, and it mentioned that one of the persons had blonde hair, and then there was something about brandy, or it was a boiled candy, and the color is either yellow or ginger. And so I decided that since this takes place in Scotland and it mentioned ginger, I decided to assume that this person's hair is red. I am making an assumption. And I chose to do this, so I am making this thing. If I get in here and I find out that this person's hair is clearly not red, if that is inaccurate. And the reason I count it as the red instead of the blonde is because the person describing it described another woman's hair as yellow. So I'm counting it. But if I find out I'm wrong, I will make myself find another book and read it too. I will be fair, but I'm pretty sure red hair. It says, a pretty, courageous young widow, faced with the task of bringing up 3 children and making her way alone in the world, is the appealing heroine of this touching love story, executed with D.E. Stevenson's characteristic freshness and charm. The 38th novel. This new work centers around Catherine Wentworth, married at age of 19 to a man with whom she was very much in love, widowed after only 4 years of happiness with Gerald. Gerald? I feel like there's another book that might be connected with it. Isn't there a book about Gerald? I don't know. But anyway, Catherine is left to bring up her stepson Simon, as well as her own twins Daisy and Dennis. Catherine's struggle to raise her children wisely is one which will move every reader deeply. So this is told in the first person, it says. Ooh. When Simon, the stepson, when he suddenly becomes heir to the family fortunes, he faces the difficult decision of either moving to the estate of his domineering grandfather or giving up the inheritance to remain free as his father did before him. And there's some more, so I'm not going to go into too much of it. It's a beautiful copy. I love this. So, yeah. Want to read this one. Looking forward to that. That's April. Next up, I could have switched over, but I didn't. It says, The Road to Yesterday. Read a book by a favorite author. Now, this is where, if you paid attention to the intro, you would have counted 13 books. I know we do not have a new month, but one of my favorite authors of all time is Jane Kirkpatrick. This is The Healing of Natalie Curtis. Jane Kirkpatrick writes books about actual people and then gives the story that history, she gives you history story. And then she gives the story that history doesn't tell based on everything she can find. And then she kind of fills in the gaps. So they are fiction based heavily on fact. Well, Natalie Curtis was a concert pianist who ended up with some stage fright. Her brother had gone to Arizona for his asthma, and so while they were trying to help her heal, he convinced her to come to Arizona with him. And when she got there, she heard some of the natives singing in their language. And she wanted to record it because it was beautiful and she wanted to hear it. And they wouldn't do it because it was illegal for them to do this. They could get in trouble. And so when she found out that they had made it illegal for them to speak their language, to tell their stories, they were like trying to wipe out an entire culture. Her father was a friend of Teddy Roosevelt, who was the president at the time. And so she went to him and said, we need to save this culture. We are a country of a bunch of cultures and we're going to lose one and this is terrible. So she got permission to record all these songs and stories and everything. And so that's the story behind this, is her getting all this recorded. And she's kind of, I don't want to say she's responsible for saving that culture because that's not true. It would have survived. People would have told the stories anyway. They would have done, but it wasn't buried. So it wasn't like black market or anything. It wasn't buried. And so it was able to be open and shared more openly earlier than it would have been. Eventually people would have woken up and realized that this is not right. But it would have been harder to revive it if she hadn't done what she did. So I have a lot of respect for her. But that same brother wrote a book, The Wooing of a Recluse. And this was him. So I wanted to read the story he wrote when I read this book. So I found this on eBay. I paid like $10 with shipping. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful copy. The Wooing of a Recluse. And so, yeah. Really excited about reading these. But I'm going to read both that month because I want to read them together. So there's that. And then June is read a book of poetry. So here's the deal. This is such a beautiful book of poetry. I'm pretty sure I saw this first from Chantal. I think she had gotten it out of the library a few times and then finally bought her own copy, if I recall correctly. It's been a while. But, I mean, the illustrations, they're stunning. And I bought it and I looked through it and I liked what I read when I looked through it that day. And then it went on the shelf, and a significant amount of it are just the poetry of picture. But I pretty much put it on the shelf and walked away. And I'm pretty sure it has to do with the title. The Lost Spells really bothers me. And I know it's not intended to be truly witchcrafty or anything like that. But it says on the back here, this is a book of spells to be spoken aloud. And that just makes my teeth itch. Here you will find conjurings and charms, spells that protect and spells that protest, tongue twisters, blessings, lullabies, and psalms. And he's not talking about witchcrafty spells, I'm sure. Look at that. That's beautiful. But it just, it's really hard for me. Every time I look at it, I just don't want to pick it up. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to read it, make a decision based upon the content. We're not going to have another Harry Potter situation here, Shatona. I'm going to read it and then if I'm having trouble with what's in it, I can DNF it. Not a problem. But I kind of actually have to read some of it. Actually read it and get to the point. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think I'm going to love it and I'm going to get over myself. But so I chose this mostly as a slap across upside my own head. All right. And then for July, it's time to switch a roo. Or if you want to, because both of them are read a short story collection. So instead of, having different options and I have to choose one, this one was, so that one was read a book of poetry. On the other side, it was like read a science fiction book or a fantasy book, but I had to stay where I was. So there we go. This is read a short story collection. So I got this, I saw this at the Grand Marais, Drury Lane bookstore. Almost bought it there, but I didn't. And I came home and I saw it. It was like a $30 book. I saw it on Book Outlet for $6 or $7 or something like that. It was not very much. And so I bought it and I've heard good things so far. I think I've only heard one story complained about. And I don't think it was content as much as it just wasn't all that good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So if I like this, I think there's one like this for Poirot. So I'm hoping that's true. But I think I saw something somewhere. So I'm going to read this one for my short story collection. It has Miss Marple Mysteries written by Naomi Alderman, don't know her. Alyssa Cole, don't know her. Lee Bardugo, don't know her. Lucy Foley, I know that name. Ellie Griffiths, I know that name. Natalie Haynes, don't know that one. Ruth Ware, I've heard of and haven't heard very good things about, and I think that's the story that I've heard not so good things about. Funny. Kate Moss, nope. Dreda Say Mitchell, I have heard of her. Karen M. McManus, I've heard of her. And Val McDermott. Here's the thing. I have not that I know of, except for maybe Ellie Griffiths. I don't think I've read anything by any of these people. Maybe Lucy Foley. One of those two, if not both. But I don't even know if I've done those. I think I happen to own books by them, but I don't think I've actually read them. So I'm looking forward to this a lot. And it's perfect for July because short stories in the middle of Jane Austen July, that will be awesome. And it's Jane Marple for Jane Austen. So I kind of like that. All right. And then we move on to August. Now in August, it had read a book with water on the cover for Montgomery, or for Doyle Sherlock. It was read a book with a house on the cover. And I was looking for a house, but I couldn't find one. I wanted to switch over just to switch over, but I ended up staying with Montgomery because the first one, I told you, I made myself, the first one I found is what I did. And the first one I found had water on it. So this was part of my birthday book haul. This is one of the books that Shelley's got me. And so Newton and Polly, the story of John Newton and his wife, the guy who wrote Amazing Grace. And I've heard really good things about this. So I'm really excited. I hope I love it. If I recall correctly, I didn't like her Luther and Catherine, though. Not that I disliked it, but I didn't like it. Does that make sense? So I'm really hoping I will really, really, really like this. But I'm a little nervous. Okay. What if I scooch all of these over? And then I can put this. There we go. Okay. So that is August. So I'm staying under Montgomery. And then next is read a book where music is a major part of the story. And again, I've got stuff out of order. That's lovely. And so I chose, the other option was puzzles and codes or ciphers. I really, really, really wanted to do that one. Was so bummed because there are a couple of books that have that I want to read so bad. But I found water, so So this one is Aaron Bartles, and it's, I mean, come on. There was an Amanda Wen book that I wanted to read for this, but I don't own it. And I made myself not buy it because this is to read your bookshelf challenge, not buy some books to read challenge. So I didn't do it. I stuck with this. So this one, it was just one of those nights. One of those crazy, impossible nights that change your life forever. When guitarist Michael Sullivan gets kicked out of his band and his apartment, landing a record deal seems an impossible dream, and nothing about Michael's prospects point to a better future until the invitation for a swanky New Year's Eve party shows up in the mailbox. It's addressed to his uncle, with whom he shares both the name and living space, but his uncle is going out of town. On the effervescent night of December 31st, 1989, as the Berlin Wall is coming down and the Soviet Union is falling apart and anything seems possible, Michael will cross paths with the accomplished and enigmatic young heir to a fading musical dynasty, forever altering both of their futures. So I've really enjoyed what I've read by Aaron Bartles. Everything is just beginning. Sounds like an amazing story. When we talked about it on the podcast, I was like, I have to buy this book. So I bought the book immediately. Have I read it? No. Am I going to this year? Oh, yeah. So there's that. And then October. So for Montgomery, I'm supposed to read a nonfiction book. Actually, both of them. I'm supposed to read a nonfiction book. So the nonfiction book I chose was When Books Went to War, the stories that helped us win World War II. And that's not the ones I would have assumed. I knew A Tree Grows in Brooklyn was one of the ones they sent over to the soldiers. But also The Great Gatsby was one. As a matter of fact, The Great Gatsby kind of flopped until they printed it and sent it over to the soldiers. And then, receipt, trash that. And then the soldiers really loved it, and now it's really popular, and I blame the soldiers. But their very favorite book was mine. It was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, so there's that. So, but there's pictures, if that matters to you. Let's see if I can find something more about it. The inspiring story of an army of librarians, 120 million special paperbacks, and the authors and books that lifted the spirits of our troops. When America entered World War II in 1941, we faced an enemy that had banned and burned more than 100 million books and caused fearful citizens to hide or destroy many more. Outraged librarians launched a campaign to send free books to American troops and gathered 20 million hardcover donations. But something more was needed. Books that soldiers could carry in their pockets and rucksacks on bombing runs and aboard ships in every theater of a war that was waged around the globe. In 1943, the War Department and the publishing industry stepped in with an extraordinary program. 120 small, lightweight paperbacks, extremely inexpensive and covering every conceivable subject of interest to millions of servicemen. And we'll stop there. But yeah, I'm going to read this. This is going to be awesome. So what they did is you've got a magazine. They printed 2 copies of each book on a magazine, on magazine presses, and then they cut them in half. And they gave those to the soldiers. Well, the soldiers would read a few chapters and rip it off and give it to someone else and keep reading and rip it off so that they could pass it around and more people could read it. It was amazing. And yeah. Okay, so now we're in November, and the choices were, in reading a nonfiction book, you had 2, that was another one where you could split. Well, so for the Montgomery side, it was read a second chance book. A book that you didn't like the first time and now you're going to give it another chance. Or a book that intimidates you. Now, look, I gotta say, I thought about doing Fantasies, whatever you want to call it, by McDonald. But A, I'd already done McDonald this year. And B, basically, here's the deal. This is the only prompt of this whole challenge that I don't like. Because I understand what's behind it, and I think it's a really good prompt for some stuff like this. But for something that I look forward to all the books all year, I didn't want to choose a book that I would be dreading all year. And I definitely would be dreading a book that I didn't like the first time and I wanted to try again. I mean, I thought about putting Tolkien on there. But again, I'd be dreading it all year. It's one thing to go, ooh, I want to try this and see if I can do this. But it's another thing to go, ugh. So I was like, no. So I chose the book that intimidates you. November. You know, Nano Month, holidays, Christmas, prep. Yeah. I'm going to do a book that intimidates me. So I chose The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky because why not be intimidated? No, I read a quote from this book. I think it was by Madeleine L'Engle. She quoted it. Was it her or was it Andrew Peterson? I think it was L'Engle, but it might have been Peterson. But there was a quote in there that was so good. It was so good. And it was one of those things where I went in and I read it to my mom and I read it to my husband and I was like, oh, this is right. And this is not big print. This is a tome. We're looking at 730 pages. Yeah. Here's the deal. There is a chance I won't finish this book, not just in that month, but at all. Because I know that that quote was a very small part of the book that some people feel like doesn't belong in the book. But I don't care. Like this says, book 9. Oh, this copy is split. I got it used and I hadn't noticed, but it's split. I might need to do some repairs. Yikes. But here's the deal. Book 9. So there are books within the book. But I'm going to try it because I really do want to read this book. And I want to read that whole thing in context. So here's what's on the back. It's a little excerpt from the book. Then he brought out and laid on the table all the things he had been keeping for 14 years that he thought would prove his crime. The jewels belonging to the murdered woman, which he had stolen to divert suspicion. A cross and a locket taken from her neck, with a portrait of her betrothed in the locket, her notebook and 2 letters, one from her betrothed telling her that he would soon be with her, and her unfinished answer left on the table to be sent off the next day. He carried off these 2 letters. What for? Why had he kept them for 14 years afterwards instead of destroying them as evidence against him? So, yeah. This in here says, The Brothers Karamazov is universally considered Dostoevsky's greatest work and one of the world's most masterfully done novels. It's a beautifully constructed dramatic work, but it is also an encyclopedic look at religion, politics, ethics, and 19th century Russia. It's a distillation of themes and questions that Dostoevsky wrestled with throughout his life. Weaved throughout is Dostoevsky's insightful look into the psychological workings of his characters, which would later impress Freud himself. Well, I couldn't care less what Freud thought, but doesn't matter. I want to read it. So that's my intimidating book. And finally, December has 4 options, but I only have 2 because I can only go from there. So the 2 options that I had were read a book that has more than 10 in the series or read a standalone. And the problem with, here's the deal. Books that have 10 in the series they're usually going to be mysteries, which means I'm going to be reading them all along anyway, and I'm not going to want to wait. And so I thought about it, especially since I tend to listen to most of the mysteries that I read. So I was like, and so I went with the standalone. And so for that, I stuck to mystery, but I decided to read A Christmas Carol Murder, A Dickens of a Crime by Heather Redmond. And I bought this last year and I wanted to read it then, and it didn't happen. I wanted to read it this year and it hasn't happened because this year is like, no thank you. So in this clever reimagining of Charles Dickens' life, he and his fiancée, Kate Hogarth, must solve the murder of an old miser just before Christmas. London, December 1835. Charles and Kate are out with friends and family for a chilly night of caroling and good cheer, but their blood truly runs cold when their singing is interrupted by a body plummeting from an upper window of a house. They soon learn the dead man at their feet, his neck strangely wrapped in chains, is Jacob Harley, the business partner of the resident of the house, an unpleasant codger who owns a counting house, one Emmanuel Screws. I'm liking this. So, murder, bah humbug. So yeah, that will be my December read, and this will be my Read Your Bookshelf Challenge books stuffness. So excited. So I thank you to Chantal for doing this every year. I love it so much. She actually does a giveaway and everything with it, which I usually start off really good, remembering to put my little entries in and everything, because, you know, I want to support it, because like when you have a giveaway, it's really kind of funny. I always feel guilty for entering because I'm like, I want someone to win and it doesn't need to be me. I just want some, but for the person who is holding the giveaway, they love to see the entries and it makes them really happy. And so I feel like I'm torn. It's like, I want to do this, but I don't want to do this, but I want to do this. So yeah, here's the thing. Put your entries in. It makes her happy. I guarantee it. On Neville. And no, you cannot have my cookies. That dog, he wants my cookies. I'm telling you. I gave him B-O-N-Z, but now he wants cookies. Funny thing, I always do B-O-N-Z because it feels like something a dog would do. And then I found out there's actually a dog biscuit company that's how they spell it. And so now I found out that people think that that's the brand. I was like, yeah, no, that's just Shatona being weird. Anyway, so are you doing the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge? Have you figured out your books, or are you going to do it each month? I like having, you know, the whole row so that I can look at them and pull one off and everything. But I mean, everybody's different, right? So, I mean, have you made your plans? Do you know what you're doing? Inquiring minds want to know. Name that commercial. Yes. Tell them. Say, name that commercial. Yes. I know. It's been a few decades. We're not going to talk about that. No. You're so cute. I love this dog. So, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I think this is coming out on Saturday. I don't know. I'm trying to get these things that I have going done. And so I'm going to have like back-to-back videos. It feels weird, but I don't want to get too far into the month with, you know, like, let's do my TBR for January. It's only the third week of the month and I'm finally getting that video. I don't want to do that, so I'm like packing them in. But yeah, I want to know. Are any of these books that I shouldn't read? Should I switch them out while I have a chance? Tell me. I need to know. And I will see you soon. Right, Truthfully? Yes. Tell them. Say yes. Go see them soon. Come on. No? Yes? No? Oh, let's shake the camera. That sounds like a good idea. Let's bump it. Maybe knock it over? Yeah. Yeah. I give up. I'll see you later.